Tension rises as Taehyung accuses Jungkook of betrayal. But when the truth is revealed, everything changes. What's the real story behind it all? Jungkook, you knew this, right? You betrayed us. Taehyung's voice pierced the silence of the night, breaking it apart with a force that seemed to make the very walls tremble. His eyes, filled with fury, glared at Jungkook, whose body was frozen in the middle of the room. His fist clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white, and the very air between them felt charged with an electric tension. The atmosphere in the dimly lit room was thick with something unspeakable. Jungkook stood motionless, staring blankly, his body rigid, unable to move, let alone speak. His throat was tight, and his breath came shallow. Nothing made sense anymore. He didn't know where to begin, or even if there was any point in trying to explain himself. Every word felt stuck, lost in the crushing silence. Jungkook, what have you done? Taehyung took a step forward, his expression twisted in a mixture of pain and confusion. He looked at Jungkook, the person he had always considered a brother, now standing before him as a stranger. A betrayer. Taehyung, I didn't. Jungkook's voice cracked as he tried to speak, but his words fell short, swallowed by the magnitude of the accusation. Don't lie to me. I know everything. Taehyung screamed, his voice raw, before throwing his phone onto the table in front of Jungkook. Every member of BTS watched in stunned silence, unable to tear their eyes away from the confrontation unfolding before them. The video playing on the phone was enough to turn the world upside down. It was blurry, but clear enough. Jungkook, standing outside with someone who didn't belong. The figure in the video was someone none of them recognized, and the conversation they shared, though muffled, seemed far too intimate. The very idea that Jungkook was talking to someone outside their circle felt like a dagger to Taehyung's chest. His mind raced with the implications. The trust they had built shattered in an instant. Jungkook swallowed hard, his gaze never leaving the phone. He felt exposed, but more than that, he felt betrayed. Not by Taehyung, not by the members, but by the circumstances themselves. If only they knew the whole story, the part he could never share. Not yet. What were you talking to them about? Taehyung's voice trembled with a mixture of anger and hurt. We trusted you. You were supposed to protect us. Jungkook could feel every pair of eyes in the room, each filled with doubt, questioning his loyalty. All of them, except Namjoon, who stood quietly, watching with a frown. Namjoon's gaze was filled with concern, but there was no judgment in it. He was the only one who seemed to understand that things weren't as they appeared. But even Namjoon didn't know the whole story, the side of the truth that Jungkook had kept hidden from everyone. Jungkook opened his mouth to defend himself, to explain the situation, but the words never came. He felt like he was drowning in an ocean of misunderstanding, and he had no way of making them see the truth. I'll expose everything, Taehyung said through gritted teeth, stepping back with his eyes fixed on Jungkook. You will regret this. Jungkook's heart ached. The last thing he ever wanted was to see the group fall apart. But he knew, deep down, that if he didn't keep the truth hidden for a little longer, everything they had built would crumble. The stakes were too high. He couldn't risk it, no matter what. Episode 2, cornered by the past, the silence that followed in the practice room was suffocating. Jungkook felt the weight of every gaze on him as he stepped back into the hallway. His mind was a storm, and he was losing control of it. He had to fix this, but how? How could he make them see the truth when it was buried so deep? Outside the room, Namjoon approached him, his voice soft but urgent. Jungkook, you know you're not alone in this. We will listen to you. Jungkook paused, his hand gripping the doorframe. Namjoon's words weren't just reassuring. They were a lifeline. But even with that support, Jungkook felt as though he was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss of uncertainty. The weight of the truth he carried felt like a burden he couldn't bear for much longer. He had to reveal what he knew, what he had kept hidden. It was the only way to save them all from the consequences of this misunderstanding. He returned to his room, alone, feeling the emptiness around him like a physical presence. His hand trembled as he picked up the small USB drive from his desk. He had kept this for days, hoping the moment would never come where he'd have to use it. But now, the moment was inevitable. He knew it was time. With a deep breath, Jungkook inserted the USB drive into his laptop, his eyes scanning the screen for what he knew was coming. The video would change everything. But there was something else, something he hadn't expected. As the footage played, he saw something that made his stomach churn. This wasn't just about him talking to an outsider. There was something darker beneath the surface, something that no one could have predicted. His hand shook as he watched the screen, the realization dawning on him that this wasn't just a conversation. It was a warning. Cliffhanger Episode 1. The screen flickered, and as Jungkook stared at it, something in the video changed. A new figure appeared, someone he hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was something far worse, something that would change the course of everything. The truth was about to break wide open, but it was far from what anyone had imagined. Jungkook wasn't the one they should fear. The weight of silence followed Jungkook like a shadow as he walked down the narrow hallway, his mind a chaotic storm of thoughts. He felt the tension from Taehyung's accusation still hanging heavily in the air, each step feeling like it took him further away from the group he'd always known as family. He could feel their eyes on him, even when they weren't there. Every glance from the other members, every whispered word behind his back, made him want to run. But he couldn't. He couldn't run from this. Jungkook knew that if he didn't act soon, everything they'd worked for, everything they'd built together, would come crashing down. The lies, the misunderstandings, they were all spiraling out of control, and he was trapped at the center of it all. He didn't know what to do. But one thing was clear. The truth had to come out, no matter the cost. When he returned to his room, Jungkook felt the familiar emptiness of the space settle in around him. His desk, his bed, the walls, all of it felt so cold now. It was as if the warmth of his bond with the group had been stolen from the very air he breathed. He walked over to his desk, eyes drawn to the small USB drive resting on it. It had been sitting there for days, untouched, its contents the one thing that could change everything. Jungkook hesitated for a moment. The decision he was about to make could either save them or destroy them. There was no middle ground, no way to go back after this. He had to show them what they couldn't see, the truth that had been buried deep within all along. His hand trembled as he picked up the USB and slid it into his laptop. His heart pounded in his chest as the screen flickered to life, the video loading slowly. As the footage began to play, he leaned closer, his eyes fixed on the screen. T first. It looked like a simple conversation. Jungkook standing outside, speaking to someone, their words faint and distorted. The person was wearing a dark hoodie, their face obscured in shadow. Jungkook had been so careful. He hadn't wanted anyone to find out. But now, as he watched the video, it felt like he was about to tear apart everything he'd worked so hard to protect. Suddenly, the video cut to something that made Jungkook's blood run cold. The figure in the hoodie wasn't just someone from outside their circle. They were someone with an agenda, someone who had been lurking in the shadows for far longer than any of them could have guessed. The conversation they had wasn't about betrayal. It was about something far more sinister. Jungkook's breath hitched. The person on the other end of the conversation wasn't just making idle threats. They were planning something that could ruin BTS forever. Jungkook had been working in secret, trying to protect them, trying to stop this unseen force from getting any closer to them. He had been making sure that they were safe, even if it meant lying to the others. But now, as the footage continued, Jungkook saw the bigger picture. The betrayal wasn't coming from him. It was coming from someone or something else entirely. His decision to keep this hidden was the only thing that had kept them safe. He closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of the truth sinking in. His heart was pounding in his chest, and his mind was racing. He had to show them. He had to let them see what he had been trying to protect them from. But how could he explain all of this? How could he make them understand when it seemed like everyone already had their minds made up about him? A knock at the door jolted Jungkook from his thoughts. He quickly closed the laptop and stuffed the USB drive into his pocket, his pulse racing. He knew who it was. Namjoon. Jungkook, are you okay? Namjoon's voice came from the other side of the door, soft and concerned, but there was an edge to it, a quiet urgency that Jungkook couldn't ignore. Jungkook took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. This was it. He couldn't keep running from this anymore. With shaky hands, he stood up and opened the door, meeting Namjoon's gaze. "We need to talk," Jungkook said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. Namjoon stepped inside, his expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. "What's going on, Jungkook? We're all worried about you." Taehyung, Namjoon trailed off, clearly unsure how to phrase it. "He's hurting, and it's like he doesn't know who to trust anymore. We need to understand what's really going on." Jungkook nodded, feeling the weight of Namjoon's words. He couldn't let this misunderstanding continue. If Taehyung and the others were going to find peace, they needed to see the truth. He hesitated for a moment, his fingers gripping the edge of his desk. Finally, he spoke, his voice quieter now. "It's not what you think. It never was. I wasn't betraying you guys. I was trying to protect you." Namjoon's eyebrows furrowed in confusion, but Jungkook could see the flicker of hope in his eyes. "Protect us? From what?" Jungkook paused, his mind racing. How could he explain it? How could he make them understand the danger they were all in, a danger that no one else could see? "I have proof," Jungkook finally said, his voice tight. He pulled the USB drive from his pocket, holding it out to Namjoon. "This is what I've been hiding. This is what I couldn't tell you." Namjoon took the drive cautiously, his eyes searching Jungkook's face for any sign of a lie. "Is this the truth?" Jungkook nodded. "It has to be. It's the only way to stop what's coming." Namjoon's eyes flicked to the USB, and he sighed deeply. "Then let's see it. Let's finally see what you've been hiding." As Jungkook watched Namjoon walk over to his laptop, he felt a sense of dread wash over him. The truth was about to come out. But would they believe him? Would they understand? The tension in the air was unbearable. Jungkook sat across from Namjoon, his heart pounding as he watched his leader try to process the video he had just revealed. The figure in the hoodie wasn't just a stranger. It was someone they all knew, someone close to them. Namjoon's eyes widened, disbelief written all over his face. "No, it can't be," Namjoon whispered, his voice shaking. He glanced at Jungkook, who nodded grimly. "I didn't want to believe it either," Jungkook said quietly. "But this person, they've been feeding information to outsiders. They're trying to tear us apart." Namjoon ran a hand through his hair, clearly overwhelmed. "But why didn't you tell us sooner?" Jungkook's eyes were filled with pain. "I was trying to protect you all. If I told you, they would have had us all in their sights. I couldn't risk it." The door suddenly swung open, and the rest of the members entered, their faces a mixture of confusion and concern. Taehyung stood at the front, still angry, his eyes burning with the same fury that had haunted him from the beginning. "What's going on, Jungkook?" Taehyung's voice was colder now, filled with distrust. "What's the truth behind all this?" Jungkook stood up, facing his friend for the first time since the accusations had flown. His hands were shaking, but he forced himself to speak. "The person you think I betrayed you with, they've been plotting against us from the inside. They've been trying to destroy everything we've worked for." He looked at Taehyung, the pain in his eyes evident. "I wasn't the one who betrayed you. I've been protecting you, even if it meant keeping this secret." Taehyung didn't respond immediately, his eyes flickering between Jungkook and the others. His anger simmered, but the hurt in his expression was undeniable. "Then why didn't you trust us enough to tell us sooner?" Jungkook took a deep breath, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because I knew you wouldn't believe me. I knew it would tear us apart. I couldn't risk it." The room fell into a heavy silence, each member grappling with the shock of what they had just learned. For so long, they had thought Jungkook was the one hiding something. But now, they understood. It wasn't him who had betrayed them. It was someone they had trusted. The truth had shattered everything they thought they knew. The room was silent, every eye fixed on the figure who had just spoken. The familiar voice sent a chill down their spines. It was Jimin, standing at the door, his face grim, his body tense. His words hung in the air, carrying an unspoken accusation that everyone could feel. "You're all wrong. Jungkook's not the one you should be worried about," Jimin repeated, his gaze sharp and unwavering. The tension in the room thickened. Jungkook's heart sank as he turned toward Jimin, his mind racing to comprehend what he was hearing. Taehyung stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" Taehyung asked, his voice heavy with suspicion. Jimin took a step inside, closing the door behind him. His usual warmth was gone, replaced by a cold determination. You think it's all about Jungkook, but you've been focusing on the wrong person. His eyes flicked briefly to Jungkook, then back to the group. The real threat is someone among us. Someone you all trusted. The words hit like a bombshell. For a moment, no one spoke. The realization slowly settled in. The enemy wasn't just some outsider. It was someone from within their own circle. Jungkook, still reeling from the earlier confrontation, felt a surge of anger and confusion. What are you talking about, Jimin? Why would you say that? Jimin's gaze softened for just a moment, but the hardness quickly returned. Because I've seen things, heard things, and I'm telling you, it's not what you think. Jimin went on to reveal the truth he'd uncovered over the past few weeks. He had found hidden messages, secret meetings, and clues pointing to a person in their midst. Someone who had been feeding information to their enemies. Someone who had been orchestrating their downfall from within. And all along, they'd been blind to it. The room erupted into chaos as the others tried to process what Jimin had said. Each of them, one by one, turned to look at the others, try to make sense of the new reality that was unfolding. So, who is it? Namjoon's voice was firm, though his hands were trembling. Who's been betraying us? Jimin's silence was deafening. His eyes met Jungkook's. And for the first time, Jungkook realized that the truth was far more complicated than he could have ever imagined. The room was suffocating, every eye on Namjoon as he held the phone with a chilling message. The words echoed in their minds, each of them turning the situation over in their heads, trying to piece together the puzzle. The traitor was closer than they thought. But who could it be? Jungkook's heart hammered his chest. The sense of betrayal had already shattered his trust. And now, it seemed that it wasn't just his own mistakes at the center of the storm. This was bigger, darker. The reality of the situation was beginning to sink in. And with each passing second, the dread only deepened. Who sent this? Namjoon's voice cracked the silence. His eyes were glued to the phone, his mind racing. Jimin stood off to the side, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Does it matter who sent it? The point is we're all in danger, and we need to figure out who the hell is behind this before it's too late. The room grew tense as the members exchanged uneasy glances. Everyone was a suspect. Everyone felt like a potential threat. Even the closest friends couldn't shake the feeling that anyone in the room could be the betrayer. Could it really be someone they trusted all along? We need answers now. Taehyung's voice was low, but his words hit hard. Jungkook, you've been hiding things from us. You say you've been protecting us, but why didn't you trust us enough to share the truth sooner? Jungkook flinched at the accusation, his throat tightening. He wanted to shout, to explain, to show them everything he had been holding back. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he clenched his fists and stepped forward. I was protecting you from a threat you couldn't see. Jungkook said through gritted teeth, his voice strained. From someone who was plotting to tear us apart. If I had told you earlier, it would have put us all at risk. But if you think I'm the one who's betrayed you, then fine. But the truth is still out there. The air was thick with distrust. Namjoon's hand hovered over his phone, his mind torn. He had been their leader, their protector, and now he was starting to question his judgment. Could Jungkook really be the hero in this story? Or was he another pawn in a bigger game? Just as the tension reached its breaking point, the door suddenly swung open. All eyes turned to see Suga standing there, his face unreadable, but his posture betraying something more. He had been silent throughout the conversation, but now he stepped inside, his gaze locking onto the group. Enough, Suga's voice was firm. This isn't getting us anywhere. We've wasted too much time. We need to confront the real issue head-on. And that means finding out who's been lying to us, who's been playing both sides. Everyone stood still, waiting for Suga to continue, his words like a command. He pulled out a small envelope from his pocket and tossed it onto the table. The group watched as the envelope slid across the wood, its contents a mystery. This came to me this morning. I didn't know who to trust, so I waited, Suga said, his voice low. But after everything that's happened, I think it's time we see what's inside. Namjoon slowly opened the envelope, revealing a single piece of paper. He held it up, and the room fell into an eerie silence as he read the contents aloud. I know what you've been hiding. Don't trust Jungkook. He's not who he says he is. The shock was palpable. Namjoon's face drained of color as he looked at Jungkook. What is this, Jungkook? Namjoon's voice cracked that Jungkook's heart dropped. This was it. The moment where everything fell apart. The betrayal was right in front of him. The paper a cruel reminder of how far the deception had gone. But then, as the group started to whisper, a thought crossed Jungkook's mind. Could this be part of the bigger plot? Could the message be another attempt to tear them apart? To make them distrust each other even more? His eyes darted to Suga, then to Jimin and the others. They all seemed just as confused and betrayed as he felt. The truth was slipping further out of his grasp with every passing second. This isn't over, Jungkook muttered, his voice low but resolute. Whoever is behind this, they won't win. Not if I can stop them. The darkness was suffocating, the air thick with uncertainty. The room was silent except for the faint sound of footsteps approaching. The group stood frozen, each member's eyes wide, waiting for something, anything, to break the tension. Then, out of the shadows, a figure stepped forward. It was J-Hope, his face grim, his expression unreadable. I know what's going on. J-Hope's voice cut through the darkness, his words holding an eerie finality. And I know who's behind it all. The others recoiled, their hearts pounding. What do you mean? Namjoon asked, his voice filled with confusion and urgency. J-Hope stepped fully into the light, revealing a small device in his hand. I've been watching, listening, and what I've uncovered. He paused, glancing around at the stunned faces. It's not Jungkook. It was never him. It was me. The room fell dead silent. The revelation hit like a punch to the gut, as every member tried to process what J-Hope had just said. What are you talking about? Jungkook asked, his voice barely a whisper. J-Hope let out a long, defeated sigh, his eyes filled with regret. I've been working with someone outside the group, feeding information. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. They threatened you all. They told me if I didn't comply. Tears welled in J-Hope's eyes, the weight of his betrayal heavy on his shoulders. I was trying to protect you. I thought I could keep everyone safe. But now I realize I've already destroyed everything. The members were in shock, unable to speak as the truth settled in. Their closest friend, the one they had trusted the most, had been the one feeding their enemies the information they needed to tear them apart. But J-Hope wasn't done. There's still time to fix this. If we work together, we can stop them. We can end this. Jungkook, still processing the revelation, stepped forward. How do we even begin to trust you again? His voice was raw, the hurt evident. J-Hope lowered his gaze. I don't expect you to, but I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I'm on your side now. I've already lost everything, but I won't lose you two. In that moment, a quiet realization settled in. They were all broken. Each of them had their own demons, their own regrets, but they were still together. The bond they shared was too strong to be torn apart by a single mistake, no matter how monumental. Namjoon stepped forward, his expression softened by the truth they had all been searching for. We'll rebuild from this, together. As the light flickered back on, the weight of the moment hung in the air. The threat wasn't over, but they knew they had one thing left: each other. With trust broken but not beyond repair, BTS stood united once again, ready to face whatever came next.